Echoes of Us, a novel by Hope Happies. Chapter 5. The First Meal and the First Echo. He woke to the smell of coffee. This required a moment's processing. He had not brought coffee. He had not seen coffee in the kitchen the night before, when he and Celia had passed through it on their way to the staircase. Copper and shadow, a table of scarred oak, nothing that required preparation. The house had been empty for 6 weeks. He lay in the charcoal linen and let it arrange itself for approximately 30 seconds. Then he got up. The kitchen was at the back of the house, reached by a corridor past a formal dining room, dark, sheeted, not in current use, and a smaller room whose door was closed. The kitchen itself was a Victorian working kitchen, maintained rather than renovated. An iron range supplemented by a gas cooker, copper pans still hanging from their ceiling hooks in descending order of size. The table was set for 2. Not formally, but deliberately. 2 plates, 2 cups, 2 settings of plain cutlery, laid with practical care. On the plates, bread that was clearly this morning's, toast still warm, butter and quince jam. A coffee press already plunged, the liquid dark and steaming. Adrian stood in the doorway and looked at the table. He had 2 available responses. The first was methodical. Document, withhold interpretation, proceed with caution. The second arrived ahead of the first, which was simply to sit down because the coffee was hot and the bread was warm, and whatever was happening here could be discussed after breakfast, or possibly instead of it. He sat down. He poured the coffee. He did not immediately try to explain any of it. He heard her before he saw her. Footsteps on the back stair, unhurried, the tread of someone who had already mapped the route. Celia appeared in the doorway in last night's clothes, carrying the extinguished candle from the corridor wall. She looked at the table. Then she looked at him. "You didn't make this," she said. "I didn't." She set the candle on the counter and sat down opposite him with the composed efficiency of someone who had decided, in the doorway, that the situation could be assessed while being participated in. She poured her coffee, looked at the bread, looked at the window where the October morning was pressing its gray-white face against the glass, picked up her cup in both hands and drank. "The range isn't on," she said. "The cooker isn't on. There's no evidence anyone has been in this kitchen since—" "Since 6 weeks ago," Adrian said, "when Lenora died." "Which means this," she gestured at the table. "Arrived," Adrian said. Celia looked at him over the rim of her cup with the expression of a woman who found this formulation professionally inadequate. "Things don't arrive, Adrian. Things are brought." "And yet," she set her cup down. "Automated systems. A timer we haven't found. Someone with access. A caretaker, a neighbor, someone the attorney didn't mention." "The range isn't on," Adrian said. "You established that. The cooker we haven't checked. The bread is this morning's, which means someone was here this morning, before either of us came downstairs." She looked at him. He looked at her. The morning light caught the copper of the hanging pans and multiplied it, filling the room with a warm, secondary illumination that had nothing to do with the gray outside. It made the table look deliberate, arranged, more significant than a table strictly needed to be. "I'm not saying it isn't strange," Celia said, with the care of a woman making a concession that should not be taken as a larger one than it was. "I'm saying strange has explanations." "Generally," Adrian agreed, "though the explanations are sometimes stranger than the thing." She looked at him with a quality of attention that was slightly different from the assessment of last night. Less threat categorization, more something he couldn't immediately name. He had the impression of being read rather than evaluated. He wasn't sure which he preferred. "You're not unsettled by any of this," she said. "I'm very unsettled," Adrian said. "I'm just not sure unsettled is the appropriate response." "What's the appropriate response?" He considered. Curious, maybe. Either the house provided breakfast, which means something, or someone was here before us, which means a different and more solvable problem. He picked up his coffee. Either way, the bread is good. Celia looked at him for another moment, not quite smiling, but with a quality around the edges of her expression that might have been the precondition for a smile, if circumstances warranted. And then she reached for the bread. They ate without speaking for a while, not uncomfortably. The kitchen had a quality of enclosure that the rest of the house, with its high ceilings and long corridors, did not, and in this smaller space, the silence between them had a different character, less assessed, more provisional. He was aware of her in a way that was, he acknowledged to himself, disproportionate to the acquaintance. The way she held her cup with both hands, the way she looked at the window rather than at him when she was thinking, a preference for the exterior over the interior when processing was required. He noted these things with the attention he brought to details that might become useful, and then noted the noting, and recognized that the noting of the noting was becoming elaborate enough to qualify as avoidance of something simpler. "How long have you known about the estate?" he asked. "I received the letter 3 days before you did." "And the research?" "Started that evening." She set her cup down. "Lenora Wycliffe, 7 years at the bar, left practice in 1968. No record after that except property documents. You, essays, New York, solitude." A pause. "I couldn't find a connection between us, beyond Lenora." "There may not be one," Adrian said. "Beyond Lenora." "Lenora thought there was. She named us both." Celia looked at the breakfast that had arrived without cause. "She was clearly a woman with opinions." He laughed, short, genuine, arriving before he'd decided to. Celia's expression didn't change, but something in it registered the laugh and did not discard it. "What did you make of the terms?" he asked, professionally. "Unusual, but not unprecedented. A conditional bequest with a behavioral requirement. Courts have upheld similar provisions. The unusual part is..." She paused. She was a lawyer. She knew what she was writing. She wrote it anyway. As though she expected it to hold. "As though she expected it to work," Celia said. The distinction seemed important to her. She let it stand. Adrian thought about Lenora at her desk, writing the terms of an inheritance that required 2 strangers to live together in a house on a cliff. The specific confidence that was required, not legal confidence, but personal confidence. The confidence of someone who believed that what she was setting in motion would, in fact, be set in motion. She was sure of herself, he said. She put it in front of 2 witnesses, Celia said. She was sure. The echo arrived at 9:17. He would later be uncertain of the exact time, but certain of everything else. They had finished eating, and Celia had carried the plates to the counter and was standing with her back to him looking out the window. And he had been about to say something, he couldn't remember what, when the sound came from the wall. Not from behind it, from within it, or from some spatial arrangement that ordinary architectural categories didn't cover. A sound, a woman's laughter, warm and specific, the laughter of someone who had just been told something delightful by someone they were glad to be with. Bright and unself-conscious. With it, arriving simultaneously, a smell. Something floral and warm. Not perfume exactly, but the impression of flowers in a room where flowers had recently been. The residue of a scent rather than the scent itself. 4 seconds. Then nothing. Celia was very still at the window. Adrian did not move. He sat with the silence that had replaced the sound and felt the specific quality of it. Not the absence of sound, but the presence of where sound had just been. The acoustic shape of a laugh that was no longer audible. "You heard that," he said. "I heard something," Celia said. She turned from the window. Composed, the composure of a woman who had decided in real time that this was the appropriate response, not of one who was unaffected. She looked at the wall from which the sound had come with the attention of a professional examining evidence, not frightened, not credulous, but present and precise. "Air in the pipes," she said. "Old houses." "It was laughter, Mercedes," Adrian said. "Old houses produce sounds that—" And there was a smell, flowers, both at once, both gone in 4 seconds. He paused. It was introducing itself. She looked at him. "The house." "Yes?" "You're saying the house introduced itself to us." "I'm saying that's the most accurate description of what just happened." Celia was quiet for a moment. Not the quiet of someone persuaded, but of someone locating the precise flaw in an argument before naming it. "You're doing what you do," he said. "You're taking an unexplained event and giving it intention, a narrative. That's not analysis, Adrian. That's projection." "And you're doing what you do," he said. "Taking an unexplained event and refusing it meaning until it produces documentation." The silence between them had a different quality now. Not the provisional ease of breakfast, but something more charged. The silence of two people who have just discovered that their disagreement runs deeper than the immediate subject. "I heard something," Celia said at last. The same words, without the follow-up. She picked up her cup, found it empty, and set it down. "And I smelled something." "Yes?" "That doesn't establish what it was." "No," Adrian said, "but it establishes that it was." The look gave him nothing. Several things at once, on levels he didn't have access to. Then she picked up the candle from the counter. "I'm going upstairs," she said. "I want to finish the survey before we do whatever this house has in mind for us today." Not unkind. The statement of a woman who had received an unexpected input and needed time with it before she decided what to do with it. Who processed alone, who did not, as a rule, process in company. "I'll clean up," he said. She went upstairs. He listened to her footsteps on the back stairs until the house absorbed them. He washed the plates, poured the last of the coffee, and drank it standing at the counter. The kitchen was quiet. The copper pans hung in their row. The light through the window was still gray-white, patient, the light of a morning that had no strong views about what kind of day it intended to be. He thought about the laugh. He was a writer of essays, a person whose professional practice consisted of turning experience into argument, event into interpretation, the world's raw material into ordered meaning. He had been doing this long enough that the conversion was sometimes automatic. Something happened, and the sentence arrived before the experience had fully registered. It was a habit he'd examined in print more than once, with the honesty that was sometimes praised without anyone noticing that the honesty was itself another version of the habit. The laugh had arrived ahead of the sentence, before any formulation. Unusual sound, unexplained scent, possible explanation. The laugh had simply been there, complete, in the room with both of them. It had not felt like data. It had felt like an address. He was aware this was not a defensible account of an auditory event. He was also aware that it was the accurate one. He sat back down at the table, took his journal from his jacket pocket, and opened it to the page he had not written on last night. He wrote the date. He wrote the location. He wrote Celia's name. It appeared before he examined the impulse and looked at it for a moment. Then he wrote. She heard it too. She said it was air in the pipes. She went back upstairs to map the corridor. I don't think either of those things is true. He capped the pen. The kitchen was quiet around him. The copper glowed in the gray light. The wall where the laughter had come from said nothing further, and the house said nothing further, and the October morning pressed its non-committal face against the window glass. He had spent 5 years in an apartment that was quiet because he had made it quiet, had arranged the silence, maintained it, chosen it daily as a condition of work and a proof of discipline. He had understood that silence as a form of control. Sitting in this kitchen, he understood something different, that his apartment's silence had been incurious. It had had no view of him, no position, no particular interest in what he did next. He could have stayed another 5 years, and he would not have been noticed. This house had noticed him. He didn't yet know what it intended to do with what it had noticed, and he suspected that was not primarily his decision to make. But the noticing was unmistakable. He was in a place that had opinions about him specifically, and was prepared to express them in its own time and by its own method. He found this neither comfortable nor threatening. He found it, more than anything, like being seen, which was different from being watched, and which he had not, he realized, experienced in quite some time. He closed the journal. He looked at the wall. The wall looked back, patient and unhurried, said nothing, and was apparently content to wait.